typically attribution is a last touch. And so let's just take Amazon as an example. There's all these different ad products that you can leverage. Instead of attributing to every single one separately, there's kind of this last touch model that they've implemented, and so have others as well. So that's one, is to think about how is the attribution actually being collected, and are you double counting and all these things. And so the last touch typically takes away this double counting piece of it. The other one that's interesting to think about is the advertised item versus what is like a brand halo of the item. And so when you actually advertise an item, then it's either the sales attribution could be of that item, or it could be of everything within that brand, so that there's a lift. And so one of the nice things that some of the retailers have done is they've given a lot of flexibility in the APIs to be able to select what you do want to put in those attribution.
Welcome back to Generation Influence, a podcast focusing on the movers and shakers in influencer marketing and e-commerce. I'm your host, Bill Hildebolt, one of the co-founders of gen.video, a leading platform in the influencer marketing space focused on advanced analytics and e-commerce outcomes. I'm really excited for today's guest. This is somebody I've been hanging out with in Seattle for the last 10 years. She is Melissa Burdock, co-founder and president at PackView, one of the leading retail media platforms in what is definitely one of the hottest spaces in e-commerce. Melissa, let's start with your career path, beginning with the 10 years you spent at Amazon, including the 5 in the advertising group that you now interface with daily as the head of PackView.
Yeah, so I started at Amazon in 2005. I was one of the original health and beauty vendor managers. And that was back when Amazon was really a bookstore. So, there were no direct relationships with any of the manufacturers. And I was there really early days of e-commerce, trying to figure out how to ship tubes of toothpaste profitably across the internet. But then I also moved to the ads team when it also was first starting. So, if you could name it, I monetized it. Amazon Mom sponsorships, new ad products, some of the ad products that we still use today. I was there when the self-service ad platform launched, sponsored products. So I was really there early days working in the ad business, and just met a ton of great and interesting and smart folks at Amazon. But in 2017, because I knew everybody and had just a plethora of knowledge of e-commerce, I was able to get the API for ads in 2017 from Amazon. And that's when I met my partner, Zhao Wei, and we were kind of off to the races in this retail media space.
Wow. And so that really all highlighted what I think is interesting about retail media, is that it feels, I think, to some brand managers and some people, like it just exploded out of nowhere. But the reality is that Amazon, and in a different way, Walmart, have had advertising businesses for well over a decade, right? It's been around, it's been building slowly. And as you just highlighted, you've been even on this side of it for the past 6 years and in building things there. You did mention in our pre-call that, as with some other things in e-com, a big part of the sea change in it accelerating was around COVID, though. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So I'm sure everyone remembers, if you look before COVID with e-commerce, and especially, so again, like PackView is more of an enterprise platform. So we're really working with enterprise manufacturers and agencies and sellers. But in before COVID, e-commerce was a thing that people were doing. It was kind of a nice to have. But in 2020, when COVID hit and the store shut down, e-commerce was critical. So it went from having like, I need to be on Amazon and Walmart and these platforms, to like, I have to be there or else people can't buy or order my products. And so, people were looking at this profitable advertising business from Amazon with retail media. And that's when in 2020, there's all this, people investing in e-commerce. And that's also when these retail media networks really popped up, and were more of these self-service retail media networks. So that year in 2020, Walmart launched, Instacart launched, Citrus, Promote IQ, and Criteo launched. And these are kind of, you could leverage, if you wanted to create a retail media network, you could just launch, like GoPuff launched a platform in a couple months using Citrus's sponsored product software and tech. And so that's when just the explosion in the retail media space really happened was because of this chain of events, which was e-commerce became crucial. And then that because people were using e-commerce and there's so much traffic and impressions, and then they were looking at this profitable ad business, they were able to kind of launch these retail media networks just in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, the timing of all that coming together, right? Sort of these like global, uncontrollable, unpredictable events coinciding with the coalescence of the software and the capabilities there is pretty interesting. One of the things I think most people probably understand is that the magic of the retail media is the ability to tie the media performance more directly to the sales impact, right? Like, so understanding I run this media, people coming down funnel, buy my product right away, that is just a game-changing capability and differentiator that is certainly part, if not the biggest part of the value proposition. But to do that requires accurate, or at least very consistent, attribution, right? Because it doesn't typically happen that somebody watches an ad and in that very moment goes down funnel and buys. So you've got to understand, what are the rules around the attribution of that sale back to that ad? And so this is obviously one of the challenges that not only do you guys wrestle with, but as we've talked about, exists in the affiliate space. So attribution is key across the media landscape, any performance-based media. Can you tell us the latest updates on how you guys think about attribution, where you think it's going? Are there standards evolving? Will it ever truly be answered? What's the latest there?
So, I mean, in the space of retail media, it's attribution. And to your point, there really is not a lot of standardization. And like I said, when all these retail media networks kind of launch, they kind of launch in these silos. Like Amazon launched theirs, Walmart launched theirs, and everyone has their own data and their own ways of aggregating this data. And so, the IAB is working on a lot of standards, actually about to launch a book that we've contributed to, our playbook, in a couple weeks, around metrics and attribution models and all this kind of stuff. And they're trying to provide some consistency within the ecosystem, with the retailers and the tech providers and everybody contributing. But to answer your question, typically attribution is a last touch. And so within, let's just take Amazon as an example, there's all these different ad products that you can leverage. And so instead of attributing to every single one separately, there's kind of this last touch model that they've implemented, and so have others as well. So that's one, is to think about how is the attribution actually being collected, and are you double counting and all these things. And so the last touch typically takes away this double counting piece of it. The other one that's interesting to think about is the advertised item versus what is like a brand halo of the item. And so, when you actually advertise an item, then it's either the sales attribution could be of that item, or it could be of everything within that brand, so that there's a lift. And so one of the nice things that some of the retailers have done is they've given a lot of flexibility in the APIs to be able to select what you do want to put in these attributions. So and that's one of the great things about our platform and the flexibility the APIs give you, is not just the time frame. So I want to have a 7-day attribution or a 14-day attribution. So, maybe there's a longer time to consider a sale. That's some things that you can play with. The other one is the actual specific advertised item versus like a brand halo lift. And these are things to really think about and ask questions around. And then this, making sure you're not double counting your attribution, so that you actually have a last touch attribution model. But none of them are perfect. They're different with each of the platforms. And this is another part of the, you get into the standardization question, which is each platform is kind of like within its own wall garden, and so they all have their own metrics and their own ways of calculating these things. And that's something else that makes it challenging too.
Are you guys, and I assume at this point you're not able to fully create apples to apples comparisons between them because of those different standards and attribution windows and everything else. Are you there yet? Do you think you'll get there? I mean, it sounds like you're pushing them to give you as much data as possible so that the advertiser can almost create their own attribution model with probably rules that you recommend. But do you have enough access to data to actually create apples to apples? And do you think that's ever going to be possible? If not?
I think we're getting closer and closer. One is because there is more flexibility in these APIs where you're able to say, okay, I consistently want a 7-day attribution window across all these retailers. Things like that help. The IAB is trying to create a lot of these standardized metrics. I think that the bigger retailers have maybe less interest in having the standardized metrics, and the little retailers have a lot more interest in making it more standardized across the industry. But it all there's a lot of differences within the data, and that is what we're limited by. So, you can't just look at ROAS across every retailer and compare it that way. And I don't think a lot of brands still aren't very, especially on the enterprise side, they're not fluid with their budgets as much. They still are kind of like planning for each of the platforms, and they are looking at things like ROAS, but you cannot, it's still not in this like apples to apples state across all these platforms. And it's part of it is the speed at which everyone's trying to release these platforms and changing metrics and all these kind of things. And it's not like everyone's talking to each other and saying, hey, do you want to do it this way? Like, nobody wants to do it that way. So there's no like real, like that kind of slows you down. And so yeah, it's kind of a water to wade within the speed to market that the retailers are launching these things, and the differences that they have within different metrics. And a big metric that is being launched is this new to brand metric that gets a little bit to an incrementality kind of a metric, but new to brand is something that these brands are launching, or I'm sorry, retailers are launching these metrics. But to answer your question, net of it is no, it's not apples to apples. It's maybe apples to pears. Like, we're trying to get closer in the fruit combination, and so maybe apples to oranges, we're like getting into a better family of comparison. And then also there's some flexibility. There's more flexibility given to you to be able to create the selections as a brand. So that's helpful as well.
You touched on something else that I think is just worth pausing on quickly, which is just even today, I think there's a lack of appreciation. I don't know if you want to say in the investor world or even into the brand manager world of how different it is to operate in an e-commerce environment versus a media environment. And you were talking about the silos and how just from the ground up, right? Amazon doesn't give one hoot about how Walmart works and vice versa. And then that, applies broadly unless, and it is interesting you've been talking about, and I think we'll talk more about this as the podcast goes on, how for some of these smaller disruptor retailers, they do have an interest in having some things that are like Amazon or Walmart to make it easier for brands to, adopt their platform. But for the most part, these big retailers, they're completely heterogeneous environments, which is not true in media. In media, everything exists to cooperate because you've got one job and it's to run ads. And if you have a different format required for your ad in the media world, versus another publisher or all the other publishers, you're going to get left out. And so, so it's obviously one of the tremendous powers that a pack view would have is existing in this world where the instinct is to be heterogeneous, to bring standardization and ability to control everything from a single dashboard and a single platform is obviously huge. So again, it just can't be overstated how critical that is in this world. And it's one of the challenges I think that held retail media back, and potentially even now, as that gets solved, to me, the snowball just continues. But let's talk about another thing. You just touched on it. Let's go deep, because I know another big trend in the space is this idea of incrementality. So let's just start with the basics. What is incrementality, and how is the industry responding to clients' demands for visibility here?
Yeah, incrementality is a hot topic. Do not come to a PackView product meeting without like some gear and a helmet on, because there's a very lively discussion within our team about incrementality. At the net of it, did I create a dollar that did not exist before? And did I make money that maybe did exist before more valuable? And one of the things about these retail media platforms that happened was, there's kind of like, okay, e-commerce critical, growth of retail media, must invest. I'm going to move money and dollars from TV because, there's no product out there, and that's upper funnel awareness. And I'm going to move it into retail media because it's direct response and it associates directly to a sale. It's highly measurable, real time. And so a lot of kind of dollars flowed in. Now the issue is, okay, now is it incremental? People don't want to just move dollars from one platform. Like I bought on Walmart, now I buy in Target. Like they want to actually have their customers buying more stuff, more different stuff on all these different platforms, not just one tube of toothpaste on one platform and now they buy on another one. And so that's really the why incrementality has become so critical, is because as people are thinking about their budgets, where I should be spending money, I want to make sure that I'm growing market share and I'm growing profitably. And for that, they need to understand, is this like actually incremental, or am I just like moving and switching people around to these platforms? So that's like, and it has become just a hot topic within the space, especially this year. The issue with incrementality is it is very, very challenging to actually measure. And so without, like to truly do it right, and if you talk to like a data scientist who's like, wants to be 100% perfect, you have to have access to everyone's data. You have to understand promotions, coupons, affiliate. I mean, like everything. And there is no, like, I don't care what platform you are, there is no magic incrementality platform. If that were the case, I'd be like a cajillionaire. If that actually was in existence. And so we do custom modeling for customers to be able to figure this out. And it really takes just so much data and understanding in the space. But we can get there with some simpler models and some directional information within the space. And that's, kind of what you have. It's like, it's good enough. It's directional. And that's kind of the models that I think tech platforms and what we can offer without that deeper customized approach.
I mean, it is such a high analytical bar. I guess I guess you can put it in the category of good problem to have, like privileged to be the guy getting asked this question. But when I hear it, on the one hand, I get it, because the promise is, okay, I can help you understand if this media is moving dollars. But at the same time, right, it feels like one of these questions that's like, well, for me to be able to answer that, I would have to have access to every piece of data about your customers everywhere. I don't even think, you, the brand, have access to that information. So how am I, as a, vendor, offering, and again, I don't want to use, point solution in a negative way, but like I'm part of the whole. Again, I guess the opportunity starts to feel like, well, geesh, if I can help figure this out, I have a very strategic seat at the table. So
Mm-hmm.
far be it from me to discourage you from, going after it. I guess the question I do have, do you ever feel like, and how do you think about, I don't feel like traditional media gets asked these questions about, well, are you driving incremental sales? Are you, it's like, hey, how many eyeballs saw my amazing TV commercial? So how do you think about that difference between the standards at which you're being asked to hit analytically versus the traditional media? And I guess maybe part of it is, look, you're the upstart, you're the challenger. That always is going to have a higher bar. But again, how do you think through that?
I think that when you think about the traditional models, like our traditional media plays around TV, these are all branding awareness. They have traditional methods of measuring. It's more like, eyeballs and how many people saw it. Retail media has always had this. We're more lower in the funnel. We're more, you search a keyword, you are in the buying mindset and you're buying, and I can measure that, and I click the sale and I'm done. So there's really kind of this difference because it's lower in the funnel and it's more direct response. And so then it's more, and it's also much more measurable, and there's more access to the direct data. So that's the other thing, is that because the data is available and it's nearly real time, and we get basically real time data from Amazon, which is like amazing. That's kind of how it is. But I will say, Amazon's going after those branding dollars too. So they are, they have Thursday night football, and that's going to have this, they're trying to go after the same branding budgets and the branding dollars. that traditional media is. And so they're just the big juggernaut. And that is one of their big opportunities, is going after the national media dollars of TV. They have already the eyeballs. And I think I was mentioning this to you, which I found so interesting. I've been watching keyword trend data on Amazon for years now, of course. And so, used to be like the big trends and the top keywords are things like iPhone case and, products. Like people are actually buying products. In the last, like within the last year, more and more of the top searches are for TV shows. So like The Summer I Turned Pretty or Jack Ryan. And these are Amazon Prime Video shows that people are going to Amazon and searching on the TV shows. And then that, is the ecosystem of Prime Video and CTV advertising that they have. And so it's just like very interesting, the trends that people are consuming and where they're going to get the products and their content that they're looking at. And so this opportunity within the retail media space can move up upper funnel to those branding dollars that have less requirements around, is it ROI? Is it incremental? Is it these things? And that is the holy grail of what the retailers can go after, which is a big opportunity.
It is truly a big opportunity. I mean, and again, the more I think about this idea of incrementality and the fact that you guys are tackling these issues and thinking through them, putting resources against it, I already felt like retail media was a juggernaut that I was like, what actually stops this from eating all other media types? And so the more I think about it, again, even being asked that question in a sense is so respectful. Hey, I think you're best positioned to have the tools to help me understand if I'm driving incremental revenue. It really is actually, in a way, very respectful, complimentary, and a huge opportunity. And so now I have to ask the question even more: what stops retail media? Not to be your cheerleader, but like, what's going to stop it from eventually eating all other media types?
Well, I think the misconception is that everyone can have a retail media network. And so, when people saw Amazon's, they're at a $40+ billion business this year. And so these retailers are looking at that pie and they're like, wow, I want some of that pie. But the challenge is that this long tail of retailers, the small regional retailers, they don't have the traffic to be able to offer a retail media network. As a brand, I can't log into 1,000 places and do campaign management and like create campaigns. Like that just is not. And by the time you get to these little guys, it's like the budget for them is so small. And so I think one misnomer is not everyone can have a retail media network. I think the Gap launched one and shut it down because that wasn't successful. So just because you have a site and just because you have some traffic coming there doesn't mean that you can actually have a retail media network. And it's really going to be a couple of big players like the Amazons, the Walmarts, Instacarts. Instacart filed for an IPO, and in the documentation it talked about, I think advertising was 30% of their revenue. Like it became a huge part of their business. But that's not going to be the case for everyone. So that's going to be the big limitation, is just like, you have to be big, you have to have the traffic, and you have to also have your own technology. So like Amazon, Walmart, Instacart, they're the three that have built their own platforms. Kroger just announced that they're building their own platform as well. So you have to have like the technical capability and expertise, and that's expensive. And then Amazon has launched Amazon Marketing Cloud, and that's again a new level of providing data analytics. And so it's like 1,000 columns of data that you can get, and then you can do all this great information about who's your customer and where are they coming from and all this kind of interesting stuff. But again, like the limitation is on being able to, one, have the traffic and the eyeballs and the actual like, place to go. And then two is having this team to be able to launch the in-house things that you have to do. And then three is the capabilities that you have to keep innovating around. And so that is the limitation in the space. It's not like infinite. And the brands do not have infinite budgets, so it's coming from somewhere, and that's an end of it. But the cool thing is that and I see this in my space, and you probably see in yours, like competition drives innovation, and I truly believe that. And so if you aren't innovating in the space and like launching things and launching new metrics and making it like one of our clients said something like, make me want to invest in your platform, retailer, by making it good for me to do so. Like, make it good and they will come. So it's not build it and they will come, it's make it good and they will come.
That was the splash of cold water that I needed, not to get too far into overhyping it.
So you're not going to build your own retail media platform. That would
Yeah, exactly. No. I'm just going to partner with yours. Uh, it does remind me too. There was this early perception of Amazon advertising before a lot of the attribution info was out there and available, that it was expensive. That was a real hurdle early on when Amazon was first, throwing some banner ads up on the site and, and doing some other things, creating some branded experiences. Is that still the perception of that retail media is expensive, or has it changed in some fundamental way?
I think that it's not I wouldn't say inexpensive, and if the tools that you're using are doing their job right, the tools like PackView, their whole goal is to make your budget more efficient, by finding the opportunities. So that is one thing that the tech space has done, is being able to make budgets more effective and efficient by finding the opportunities so that it's not so expensive. Because you can come in and bid on keywords, and it's not necessarily that. And the self-service platforms have democratized it so that you can come in and cost per click models are relatively inexpensive. It's more so the saturation in the space, and so in the competition is what's happened. And so because you have so many more brands coming in paying to play, it used to be on Amazon that you could just rank organically and you could do coupons, you didn't have to pay to play. But with the saturation in the space, what I mean by that is, if you take like the water bottle business, and I have a client that's in the water bottle business, so I take this as an example. He talks about, like, 5 years ago, there were like 10 brands in the water bottle space on Amazon. Now there's like 100, and they're all bidding on keywords water bottle. So that drives up, kind of CPCs in the space for the word water bottle. And so then you need to rank on, I wish there was a keto water bottle, but that's a bad example. That's what came to mind. It's like, you got to rank on like very niche kind of ways to be able to still win. So the answer is, there's some things that are expensive, especially within display, like Kindle advertising and things like that, or display, like packages that Amazon would sell. But the CPC space, what's nice about it is it's relatively cheap. Cost per clicks are 50 cents, or not expensive, especially compared to other places. The challenge that's happened in the last, couple of years is just because Amazon's this great marketplace where you can just, build a product, launch it, sell it. The moat to build a product is so much less. You can just come and, anyone can do it. But the challenge is, and especially if you come into a category where there's a couple players that are spending a lot, and you don't want to be up against Procter and Gamble in a category with their budgets. And so, one is just the plethora of brands that have launched within the space. And then two is just the competition that you might face. And so the game is figuring out, where's the white space? Where is there like product opportunity that's not crowded? There's not a lot of people bidding on keywords, and then creating a product in that category. So that's something that's happened.
That makes all the sense in the world. So there's this product proliferation that gives you options on where to play. And instead of saying Amazon advertising is expensive, the saturation impact makes you say it may be expensive to advertise on Amazon, but that is a slightly different thing. That is all the competition taking me there, not Amazon driving that itself. So, all right. Well, I want to jump back to PackView. This has been great. You've educated all of us on the space in general. Outside of standards and measuring incrementality, what's most on your mind? Where are you guys taking the platform and the product?
Yeah. So one thing is, and what's kind of happening in our space too, is kind of moving from point solutions to like a full suite of products. So we started a PackView as bid management platform, advertising. And actually 2 years ago, we were acquired by a company called Assembly. Now we've rebranded the whole company as PackView, but they owned a company called Helium 10. And that's kind of the SMB play in the SMB market. So we are a holistic platform that covers both the sellers, the SMB market, and the enterprise market. So that's one, is coverage of the market. Two is then the suite of products that we offer. So moving from just an advertising suite of tools, and Helium 10 has been kind of an everything platform anyways. From a PACV perspective, an enterprise perspective, we have added a ton to our suite of products. We have sales operations, we have revenue recovery, we have data insights and analytics. So really we're one-stop shopping as much as we can be. And where we don't, like yourself, we partner when we don't play in the affiliate space, but we partner with folks that do, so we can make it more of a streamlined workflow for the brands that we're working with.
That's amazing. Yes, we're very excited to partner with you guys on the influencer side of things. I'm curious, now that Helium 10 and and you guys are together, does the enterprise customer and the SMB customer, are they working off the same platform, or are they still two separate product suites and you kind of got to toggle between them or choose which side you're going to play on?
So to the customer, people either use Helium 10 platform or they use PackView. So the platforms are kind of two separate platforms. On the back end, we have spent the last year integrating our product and engineering team so that we have one team working on our advertising product. And so within the Helium 10 suite, you'll see the advertising product that they use called Atomic, but it's using the PackView backend. But on the front end, it's a simpler like AI kind of tool that sellers can use. Whereas on the PackView UI end is more of the bells and whistles of the PackView product. So on a customer perspective, you log into either the Helium 10 portal or the PackView portal. But on the back end, what we've done is instead of two teams working on the APIs, we've combined and made more efficient, and one team working on the advertising platform, another team working on inventory management and other things like that. So that's how it is. And we are, it's an evolution. So we are constantly improving our tools. And that's why it's, I feel bad for brands, and I have an executive share group that I run, and, they always complain about we don't know what people do. It's so hard because everyone talks about things that they do and they don't really know. But at the end of the day, I think that we are where we are today. We start with one product. We have more of a suite of products, and where we'll be in a year or two from now, we'll be even further. And so, I think the key thing is just making sure that you're innovating and that you're working closely with these retailers to get their APIs. I just had a call this morning with one of them talking about new data, new insights that we're looking for, and they're partnering with us to do that. So, really pushing the boundaries on what we can get so we can build the best tools possible.
That's phenomenal. Well, it makes all the sense in the world. If you're being asked to answer this incrementality question, right, you're ultimately going to have a lot of different sources of data come together. So the idea that it becomes a bit of a one-stop shop is phenomenal. And again, obviously, what I take away from all that is the trust that you've earned with your customer base to, have that opportunity. And frankly, as you just highlighted, now on the flip side, the trust of the retailers, right? And that one of the, again, great benefits of retail media is that if this is a huge revenue opportunity, and again, we've heard the announcement from Walmart about the huge impact of the media business on the business overall. Instacart, the 30% of their business, revenue now coming from retail media. If that then encourages them to make more data available so the brands and others can make smarter decisions about how they merchandise and invest, let alone investing their media dollars, that's a great world, right? That is a very exciting place to be, where, huge opportunities for all of us to be more efficient, to do more things, to, and continue to innovate. So I love all of that. All right. Well, this has been amazing. I do always like to close these things out with something fun. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll compare mutual connections on LinkedIn, but unfortunately that's not possible with you because we have an unbelievable 78 connections in common. And so there's literally not enough time on podcasts to read them all. The way I think about that is, in my world, all roads lead back to Melissa. So I guess if they're mutual connections, we both have to have them. But I feel like you're connected to everyone I know. And so it's what's one of the things that's made this so much fun. So instead of doing that, why don't we do this? Knowing you've inspired a lot of people, tell us someone who really inspired you and got you going down this incredible path. We'll shout them out. We'll let them know how impactful they were for you, and we'll go from there.
So I think what you're saying is you and I are the Kevin Bacons of e-commerce. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That's what I was thinking when you're saying that. So this is a hard question, but I guess that there's two people that kind of charted a path like this one before me. And one is a guy named Spencer Millerberg. I don't know if you know him, but he was like the OG original founder of a company called One Click Retail, which was the original like Amazon market share product in the space. He was the first one that actually created it. And he sold his company to Essential. And he and I worked at Amazon together. I remember sitting across from him at a table. We were in the HBC category together and everything. And he, sent me a Slack or whatever we used at Amazon. I can remember the chat. And he was like, I'm leaving. This is my last day today. And I was in a meeting with him. And I was like, where are you going? And I was like, I'm going to create my own company. And I was just like, really amazed that he has this huge family, 6 kids, and he's going off to like go create his own gig, bootstrapped. And, I thought, wow, that's like pretty gutsy to go out, leave Amazon, go do this. And he did, and he was very successful and create from zero. He created from nothing. Nothing is, and he chartered it. Like now there's some companies that do the kind of similar stuff, but he was kind of the first one with that idea that did it. And then another one is Patrick Miller, who is the co-founder of Flywheel Digital. And similar to him, he was one of the first to create this Amazon agency. I actually met with him, was talking to him about maybe being employee number 3 with his co-founders before I started Flywheel. And, just an amazing guy. We've kept in touch. I mean, he's a very, very good friend of mine, as is Spencer. And I've just watched both of them create these amazing businesses. And so they kind of chartered this path where both of them, Patrick on, the agency side, Spencer on the SaaS side, created these big businesses in our space, starting, they're kind of the OGs, and now they're, there. And so I look at them, and they're still very good friends of mine in my network. And, so yeah, I'd give a call out to both of them because they chartered that path. And I think they also provide a lot of motivation to others in the space too. So,
well, those are great stories. I heard of One Click Retailer. I don't know Spencer. I got to go look him up. That was a great origin story. And oh yes, Patrick definitely has got to be one of the 78 mutual connections. I think of him as the godfather of analytics, in our world. And so that one doesn't come as too much of a surprise either. But 2 great names. Melissa, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I learned so much. I know everybody who listens is going to learn so much. This is an important space, and I'm so excited for you, leading us into this promised land. And I can't wait to see what you guys do next. So thank you again. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week on Generation Influence.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. New episodes of Generation Influence drop every Wednesday, so be sure to check us out and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. You can find information on next week's guest in the description below. Hope to see you then and there.